Answers in Genesis about origins. The Genesis account of creation meets the standard of scientific, where the evolutionary theory is not. Let's talk about it today on Justified by Score. The book of Genesis gives us an accurate depiction or account of the origin of the universe. The problem is that most people don't know or study to find out what Genesis actually claims. In this series, I want to dig into, in order to pull out of Genesis, answers to the origins of the universe. My focus is to expound upon the creation account to further explore its validity, authenticity, and to give you evidences. My ultimate goal is to show you how to defend the biblical account of creation as the author originally intended, and especially in the face of secular opposition. Let's start with this question. Is the Bible right or is science right? You should first dissect a question before you determine the necessity for an answer, or even how to answer it. The way you phrase the question may impose biases and assumptions that require facts first to be established. Example, why will LeBron never be great like Kobe? The question presupposes things that you didn't establish facts for, making it a fallacious question. Just like, which is right, the Bible and creation or science? The question presupposes a false dichotomy. It automatically assumes that the two are diametrically opposed. If you examine it closely, the Bible's account for origins and science are quite harmonious.
For some reason, we got this idea in our head that it has to be either God or science. On one side, we say, well, everything we've learned in science kind of disproves and explains away God, so we don't really need God anymore. Poof. On the other side, we say, well, I really believe in God, so I'm just going to kind of ignore everything we've learned in science over the past 500 years because, well, science is probably just wrong. But I don't think the problem is whether it's just this one or that one. It's that we think it has to be just one or the other. When think about it. Even if you were a non-physical super intellect and you wanted to bring a physical universe into existence, first, you'd need the stuff to make it out of. Second, you'd have to come up with how all that stuff was going to come together to form things. And third, you'd probably do it in a way that's organized and makes sense. Or in other words, you'd have to come up with science. So then it wouldn't be about, is it just this one or that one? It's about other signs of intent and rationality, order, mind, in the science. Or not. You decide.
Science doesn't say anything. Scientists do. The father of science, Galileo, who is credited with the development of the scientific method, also known as the father of observational astronomy, he was a believer in God. He believed that the universe had a designer, therefore was in order, and that order could be observed. Early scientists and astronomers like Isaac Newton, Pascal, Bacon, Kepler, and even the most famous Albert Einstein all believed in God. And they believed that he created the universe. And because he created the universe, that science could be done. Albert Einstein is also quoted to say, science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. They all believed that because there was an orderer, that science could be done and they could explore and discover what that order is. Let's define what science, or what I mean when I say science, is. When I mention science, I'm referring to the scientific method. The scientific method deals with what is observable and what is reproducible. With that understanding, in order for anything to be scientific, it has to be one, observable, or historical. It had to have been observed, or reproducible. You have to be able to reproduce it. If we take that approach, the Bible and science are very complementary. Do not confuse the term scientific with theory. A theory is not scientific because it cannot be observable nor reproducible. Later on, we will talk deeper about evolution, but evolution is just a theory. It is not scientific. You cannot reproduce something coming from nothing, life coming from non-life, nor DNA recreating or creating new information which allows species to develop into new species. But if I say if, the Bible is right, and John chapter 1, it says Jesus was in the beginning, it makes the creation account historical, which then makes the creation account in Scripture scientific, where evolution fails to meet that same standard. But since we're talking more specifically on science, let me give you some examples. In John chapter 26, verse 7, it says he hangs the earth on nothing. And that's what it does.
At a time when it was believed that the earth sat on a large animal or on a giant, 1500 years before Christ, the Bible spoke of the earth's free float in space. He hangs the earth on nothing. Science didn't discover that the earth hangs on nothing until 1650, 3,000 years later.
Isaiah 40, the earth is round. Genesis chapter 2 establishes the first law of thermodynamics. And in Psalms 102, verse 25, it establishes the second law of thermodynamics. Leviticus 15 talks about washing hands under running water.
Encyclopedia Britannica documents that in 1845, a young doctor in Vienna named Dr. Agnes Semmelweis was horrified at the death rate of women who gave birth in hospitals. As many as 30% died after childbirth. Semmelweis noted that doctors would examine the bodies of patients who died, then, without washing their hands, they would go straight to the next ward and examine expectant mothers. This was their normal practice because the presence of microscopic diseases was unknown. Semmelweis insisted that doctors wash their hands before each examination. When they did that, the death rate immediately dropped down to 2%. Look now at the specific instructions the Bible gives to the Hebrew nation over 3,000 years ago when it comes to dealing with disease. And when he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, wash his clothes, and bathe his body in running water. Then he shall be clean. Nowadays, doctors wash their hands in running water. But it wasn't too long ago that they did so in a bowl of still water, leaving invisible germs on their hands.
Hygiene type stuff. Leviticus 13 talks about the laws of quarantine. 17:11 talks about there is information in the blood.
Leviticus 17 verse 11 says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I've given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that makes atonement." Most of us don't think too much about the fact that a doctor can find out the health of our flesh by taking a sample of our blood. But the test can evaluate the health of our kidneys, our liver, thyroid, and heart. Among other things, the blood can reveal diseases and conditions such as cancer, AIDS, diabetes, anemia, and coronary heart disease.
Psalms 8 talks about oceanography. Job 38 talks about light waves and radio waves. And check this one out. Genesis 6:15 and Noah's Ark's dimensions are still scientifically unmatched in its design. These are just a handful of instances where the Bible got it right well before science got it there. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you obtained some valuable information. In the next episode, we'll get more into the specifics on the origins of the universe and how long was a day in the beginning. And I hope to see you next week in that video. Lord willing, of course. Peace and grace.